Hello and welcome to Education Talk. Now, this is one of your best programs on education on television. I'm Wilma, and on this program, we discuss various challenges faced by politicians, head teachers, students, and parents alike, and we procure solutions to these challenges. You're very welcome to this program. To discuss various issues on education happening during the week with me is Dr. Chrissy Mafidon, who is a consultant to governments when it comes to education. Dr. Chris, you're very welcome to our studios.
Thank you for your kind invitation.
Let's see what's been happening during the week. Some Welsh pupils are leaving school with virtually no financial education. A Plate Camry AM has said. Bethan Jenkins said time devoted to the subject varied from 180 hours over 3 years to almost nothing. She wants to see a law introduced to promote financial literacy, and a 6-week consultation on her proposals begins on Monday. Now, the effect of a lack of financial education is directly linked to the increase in the number of families using loan sharks. Looking at some statistics here, currently an estimated 310 families are using loan sharks. £350 on average is the loan taken out. About £700 million a year is being paid to loan sharks. The illegal money lending team, IMLT, has managed to help more than 23,000 victims of loan sharks over the past decade. Let's watch this report from the illegal money lending team.
It all started when I was I just turned 17, so roughly 17 years ago. Bought a car, and he was known to everybody in the area as being the person to get cars from. He was a friend of the family as well. My wife went to school with him. So obviously being a friend, that's the best people to go to, you'd think. Bought the car off him for £250. And started off where I was just paying him £30 a week. After a couple of weeks, the payments increased. He wanted more, and then a couple of weeks later, he wanted more. It went from 30 to 50 to 60 to 70. And then because obviously I was using money to pay him instead of buying food and gas, electric, paying the rent, I then had to lend more money off him to cover them, and he'd chuck interest on top. And if I couldn't pay him 1 week, he'd double what I owe him. It just spiralled out of control. He started to give threats saying that if we didn't pay him, he was going to hit us or start taking stuff out of the house, which he did do. Took kids' PlayStations, took any console we got for them. He took a car off us, and there was one occasion where I was ill. I was on the city, and he just started laying into me in front of my kids. I was always stressed. I was working all the hours God sent, doing 2 jobs, sleep for 2-3 hours a day, living on Mars bars, just to get the money to pay him. I had a mortgage at the time, which I should have been able to afford to pay, but because I was having to pay him £200 a week, we lost the house. Me and my wife, because we lost the house, because we didn't have the money, we were always arguing, splitting up. I mean, I had a heart attack because of all the stress. I couldn't pay him. I lost 2 jobs at the same time, tried to commit suicide, tried to hang myself in the loft, but I was stopped. So I went to the local park, and if it wasn't for the police, I'd have probably gone ahead and done it. Every time we asked, it was either £9,000, which was the main figure he just stuck with. Other than that, it was just, you owe me a lot. I mean, when I got retired off due to ill health, I got a lump sum of £8,000, which I give him the majority of, and we still owe him £9 grand. Even when I was in contact with the loan shark team, and I was still paying him but keeping a record of it, every other week I'd ask him, and it was still £9,000. Regardless of what I was giving him. Once I sat down and worked it out with the loan shark team, I'd actually repaid around about £90,000 over the period of 17 years. 17 years of sheer hell.
And Dr. Chris, looking at that clip and listening to it, we now know that children in England are to have lessons warning them of the dangers of loan sharks. But the children are not just the one taking out these loans currently. They are the adults, especially the young adults. Mike said he took out that loan when he was just 17 years old. What needs to be done?
We have a legal requirement that no person under the age of 18 can take out loans or take out major credit cards or get involved in any such financial deals. So what the government can do is do exactly what we do with driving license. Before you can have opportunity for you to drive any car, you have to go for a theoretical training. So you do the theory exam, and then you do the practical exam. Then we give you the keys to drive a car. At pre-18, we should, either 17 and a half or before you are the age of 18, everyone should be given that same opportunity of understanding the theory of interest payments, interest rates, compounding interest, and literally go through a system of education and training. Because don't give somebody a credit card without telling the person what are the consequences of running real huge debts on credit card. Don't give the person a tempting opportunity of an overdraft facility when you've not told them the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. Because if we are just giving you, oh yes, you can have money now, you can borrow this, you can do that, then you must ask, what can go wrong? If you know what can go wrong, like you do in driving, you know what can go wrong. Therefore, we tell you what it means to drive safely, what it means to drive on the motorway, what it means to drive on the A road, and then you follow the driving instructions. So if you follow the instructions that goes with it, and that has to be provided by a third party. Remember, the driving test and the driving teaching is not done by the car manufacturer. It's done by a separate agency. So if you want the banks to do the instructions, that's what we're doing now. If you send somebody a credit card, what do? You send about 15 pages and all of them in fine print, and by the time you read the first two paragraphs, you've forgotten what you read in the first line, and therefore you just push that aside and say, oh, I might as well take the card and I'll learn on the job. You don't learn on your job. If you learn on the job, you're going to make all the mistakes of your life. If you talk to your parents, some of your parents may be able to give you hints about what it means to have credit, what it means to be what it means to drag into the red, what it means to adhere to bill, what does it mean to have a credit judgment, a county court judgment. So what are the long-term implications of being able to buy a mortgage, buy a house on a mortgage, if you don't have a good credit record? So those are things that can be done and must be done independent of the financial institution, because that's where we are getting wrong now. We are allowing the financial institution to inform the customers. They don't do that. They advertise to the customers and sell to the customer, because that's their remit. Their remit is to please their shareholders. Their remit is not to please you. So you have to get financial literacy. And so that's why it falls back to the government, because the government then suffers the consequences if we have a country of debtors.
Which means, Bethany Jenkins, her proposals that it should be made in law. There should be a requirement that financial literacy should become a law, not just for those in schools, but also for adults as well, is correct.
That's right. Because at that point of being able to borrow money, because before a certain age you can't borrow money, you can have credit cards. At that point of borrowing money, you must prepare the minds of the child, because he's no longer a child, he's now going to be an adult. That period of adolescence should be used as a window of opportunity to let us know what it means to borrow, what it means to lend, what it means to be able to pay bills on time, and what are the cumulative consequences. Almost like playing a game of Monopoly, because that is a practical game that tells you what it means, what life is all about. So we should have, if you like, a financial monopoly given to everybody. When you've had that, then you can apply to have a credit card.
An example of what Mike said in the report we just watched, he borrowed £250 to buy a car, and it spiraled to over £90,000 in 13 years. Now, the government needs to do a lot, talking about campaigns to make people very aware of this, but what are some strategies that the government can employ to stop such things, apart from what the illegal money lending team is doing by prosecuting people? More needs to be done.
We can insert that into most soaps that are watched on telly, because most people will relate to that. we must use all the avenues. We can use we must use the mass media. We must use the institutions that we already have. We must use charitable organizations, because there are a lot of debt counseling charitable organizations available now. Use all the means available, but please do not subcontract it to the banks. If you do, what you're essentially saying is that they have vested interests in people getting involved in some form of borrowing. So if you have vested interests, the only thing they can do is desensitize you to the consequences, and if you like, sell it to you and oversell it to you until you buy the idea of, oh yeah, it's good to be a debtor, it's better to be a debtor than be a creditor, But we know that you will always be a slave to the lender. So you cannot have any independence, you cannot have the freedom to think or even do a lot of things if you know that you are indebted to somebody. You want to continue servicing that debt. And then this is a mathematical problem as well, because it's a compounding interest. So if you borrowed, no matter how little you think the 350 pounds is, if you borrow 350 pounds, after 1 month, the interest goes on it. So by the time you're looking at the second month, you're not looking at 350 now, you're looking at 300 plus the interest. So it just adds up very quickly, and it goes into fantastic sums of money that you would never, ever could have imagined before. So you should have a graph showing, if I pay back my money now, this is what I'm going to pay back in the first month.
The problem is the low level of numeracy amongst adults. So sometimes they are not even able to calculate the interest they're paying on a loan.
That's right. You ask them what's the meaning of APR. They don't know what that means. They don't even know what it stands. They don't know what it stands for. They don't know what the consequence of a high APR is compared to a low APR. The idea of going anywhere to go and shop and say buy now and pay later is completely balmy.
Really, an independent institution should be responsible for educating the public about this. We shouldn't leave it to the banks.
Nor the money lenders.
All the money lenders.
Another thing is that we can put a special warning sign on every advert that promotes loans or things that can be bought on credit. Put a very big, almost like they have with cigarette now, a huge government warning that if you borrow money, the rate of borrowing is totally different from what you are imagining. The money you're taking out is not the money you're going to pay back. You're going to pay back much more than what you borrowed. So you understand that. Understand that. It's a fine biblical basis.
On every loan.
On every loan.
In bold print, not just in little print.
No, in bold print, on top of the application forms, on any advertisement that goes out telling people that they can borrow. Tell them there are always consequences of borrowing.
Let's look at the role of the parents in educating their kids about loan sharks. This shouldn't be left to the schools alone, even though the schools are going to be having some lessons on them. What should parents do? And some people are scared to actually come out to say this is what they've been involved in.
Yeah, but if the child or the young adult is still living at home with the parent, that's fine. They can always get counseling from the parents and advice from the parents and ask, well, I'm hoping to buy a car. Should I buy a hire purchase? Should I buy cash down? Or would you mind giving me a soft loan as my parent?
The problem is some of the young adults don't even tell their parents what they are going into. So the parents really need to be on the lookout.
Yes, because the advert is very compelling. The advert is very strong. It pulls people in. Because when you see a giant TV screen, or you see a fantastic car and the car says 0% finance, what does that mean? You need to sit down and ask the parents, what does it mean? When you say 0% finance, does that mean that I'll pay no interest at all? Because most people just think, oh, 0% finance means I borrow £5,000, buy a car, and then I'll work out and pay back my £5,000. No, you don't. You pay much more than that. Because the lenders will come after you.
Now let's see other things on the news. Every Woman, a global membership organization that champions the advancement of women, especially in technology, organized their 2014 awards. Quite beautiful, quite interesting. Dr. Chris, let's look at Every Woman, the FDM Every Woman Technology Awards. Now, what are the criteria to be nominated for these awards, and who are the winners? What are we looking at when it comes to women in technology?
Traditionally, we've had a real shortage of women going into technology, science, and engineering. We have 13%, which means instead of having 50%, because women form 50% of the population, So if we are going to take that to a logical conclusion, we should have 50-50, but we have 13%. So the government is thinking, and a lot of organizations, including companies, essential, quite a few companies, want to see how can they stimulate the interest of young girls. How can they encourage girls to come in and love science for the sake of science and want to take it further as a career, not just as a subject I like in class, but translate to a personal choice. I want to go to university and study mathematics. I want to study technology. I want to study engineering. So that's what they're doing. So they're now bringing out successful women as role model, because if you see a lady engineer, you're more likely to think, oh, too, I can be an engineer. If they show you a photograph of engineers and all 40 of them are men, the psychological message you get from that is that, oh, that's a main profession. That's a male-dominated profession.
So this is really to help the girl child.
Help the girl child understand that they are successful women, successful mothers, and successful technologists. So they combine the role of being a woman with that of a technologist, leading cutting-edge science, knowing that someone like Dr. May, a person, the first African-American female astronaut. You want to look at all the original coders of software were 100% females. Most people don't understand that, because today is almost reverse. It's a male reversal. The first people that thought of software programming were females.
So what happened down the line?
Like every other thing, one generation was not able to hand it over to the other, was not able to hand it over to the other. That's one. And two, then it was a niche market. It was a very niche profession. So you were doing it, and it was linked to secretarial studies and people learning typing. So the idea was, oh yes, we'll have that. But we don't have typists anymore. We have word processors. So we don't just have huge machines anymore. We now have software controlling almost every aspect of our lives. So with time, it gradually faded into software engineering and computer science. And what are the requirements? They want you to have physics. They want to have computing. They want you to have maths. So the requirements now at university level literally excludes, they're using so-called non-female friendly subjects. Now eliminates females from going on to study this profession in university. So as soon as you make it a mainstream university course, it's now outside the reach of females. Originally, it did not start as a university course. So those are the salient points. But I feel the most logical person on the planet can enjoy programming, and because you can see a solution to a particular problem, you can see the decoding. You have the patience to be able to debug any program you write. So it is a natural area for ladies to be involved in, and that's what the award was all about, to try and encourage more girls to go into some form of computing, technology, or engineering and mathematics.
Tell us a bit of our award recipients. What exactly they did? I can see that's an award you have there.
Yes.
The Rising Star of the Year winner award.
Yes. So the award recipient have to be involved in industrial application. Industrial application of the technology. They have to have used it at managerial or post-managerial levels. They have to have used it creatively. That means look at a problem, be able to identify the problem, and be able to come up with a technological solution to the problem. So those are essentially the key aspect of it. And every single person ought to know this. It doesn't matter what field you are in. There is an aspect of your work, if you're a doctor, that cannot take place today if you don't understand the technology of database storage and clinical records. So if you're a teacher, you have to understand, again, database storage of your students and the way you are going to manipulate or analyze your data. So we are living in a data-saturated atmosphere. If you are a politician, you're going to have a database of voters, and you have to be able to interact with your database of voters. So you have to be able to use technology. If you cannot use technology, what we are saying essentially is that you are operating at less than half capacity. But if you use technology, you are living in a technological enabled world where you can send and receive emails literally from any part of the room you are in and from any part of the house you are in. So you have taken your office home by understanding technology. But if you don't understand technology, you are very, very limited. So it's not, there's no gainsaying at all. If you're a woman and you think that technology is not relevant to what you're doing, you need to think again, because there's a lot more you can do with technology than without it.
That brings to mind, when you were talking about data, what the great man of God, Pastor Chris, said. He said, data is actually the future currency of the world.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what you're saying. Most of the people, the recipients, they did a lot when it comes to data, and they worked on an industrial scale in a managerial position. Quite interesting. Now, tell us what the Minister for Women said in the ceremony.
She was very encouraging. She classified women as raising the high bar. Most all the nominees, what they've really done is lifted the bar for requirements and then really pushed it almost as trailblazers in new areas, using technology innovatively. That means the problems that were there yesterday that were trying to be addressed manually is being today replaced by something that is less manual, more automated, and therefore less dependent on human errors. So if you are involved in any form of work, you need to sit down and really re-examine and re-evaluate what you did last year and see how much more you can do this year using the technology available to you. That's one. Much more you can do. And then productivity will go up. Efficiency will go up. And there's no way you can therefore say that advances will not move on. And it will have economic consequences. So if you don't understand the use and the application, mainly application of it in every aspect of life, then you need to reconsider yourself again and say, get involved with the younger generation, because they are, if you like, they are the analog, we are the analog generation because they are the digital generation. So we had our studies, with pen, paper, and pencil, which was very old-fashioned, but they are having it with tablets. They are using all form of devices that were not imaginable only 10, 15 years ago. We're totally outside the realm of imagination, that you can now sit down and say, on the basis of what is happening here, you can stream video from a small device, as small as a mobile phone, to generations and huge audiences around the world, just from a tiny device. That's earth-shattering. That's more than magic. So you cannot do your work efficiently without using current tools and current technologies.
I don't even call it the future of education. I say it is the current trend of education now.
It is.
And that's what most of the universities and the schools should really adopt when it comes to online education and having the online platform. Not just in universities, as we have some distant learning courses, but even in the primary schools.
Yes, or any form of learning can be aided or supported by one form of technology or the other. If you're not using technology, it's because you've not explored enough. Because you can capture video, you can record videos of a class, and you can come back and play it over and over and over again. So the issue of saying, I forgot what was said, is completely out of it.
Lord, talking about education, innovation and education, Lord Parton, Chris Parton, the Chancellor of Oxford University, made a contribution at the Innovation and Education Conference in Brussels last week.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because he was trying to look at the investment, the differences between the American investment in higher education and the UK investment in higher education, and who really has a sole responsibility for higher education. Because he was trying to say it has to be a partnership. There have to be the private sector contribution, but the leadership must be provided by the government. You cannot relegate the development of our minds and the development of our youths and the skilling of our youths to any person except the government, because the government ultimately will benefit from a skilled workforce, because your economy is only as good as the education that you're giving your youths. So if you see that as a national priority, then you're not going to have crisis in terms of outsourcing jobs to different parts of the world. You are going to be able to have skilled domestic workers being able to discharge their responsibilities and make contribution to the economy. So if you separate education from employment, then you've got it wrong. If you know that education directly leads to skill acquisition, it leads to knowledge acquisition, and therefore leads to employability, then you know that, oh yes, we have to make sure that our youths are not roaming the street. We have to give our youths the right tools. So university education in the UK should really come up, and the government should understand that if you don't have a skilled workforce, there are other nations in the world that are skilling their youth. they will then come in and make contribution and repatriate their economic benefits back to their country. So if you're really, really serious and you want to be a dominant player in the world of tomorrow, you have to look closely at our under-investment in tertiary education. We are not investing as much as we can.
So what you sow indeed, definitely, is what you reap. For us to tackle the issue of unemployment in this country, one of the first steps the government needs to take in the right direction is actually reskilling the youths, allocating a large sum of the budget to reskilling the youths.
Yes, if you do that, the amount of money you're going to pay in unemployment, in terms of so-called unemployment benefits, because I don't believe there's any benefit in being unemployed. The amount of money you're going to pay in terms of social welfare is going to dramatically reduce. Why? Because you don't longer have an army of the unemployed. Then the knock-on effect that is going to be on crime and criminality is going to reduce. So you are cutting all the budgets by just shooting one simple bullet. It's a magic bullet. Education is a magic bullet. I still believe that way. By giving the students what they require to be confident in themselves and express their talent and skills, then you know that you are building a nation. You can't say you are building a nation by building physical structures. They will collapse. Nobody will manage them. You have to build the intellectual capital. You have to look at, capacity building. You have to look at every single boy or girl, be examined and interviewed and exposed to a range of professions and say, which profession do you prefer? If once they have a preference, then you can develop in that regard.
The government spends an average of £37,000 a year on each prisoner, to keep the person in prison.
Sadly.
Shouldn't the government spend that amount on each youth in education?
That's a big question. That's a very, very serious question. I wish our policymakers have done the calculations that way, because they are not always looking at how much is education costing us. They are not looking at how much is crime costing us. They are not looking at the link between education and criminality. They don't understand that the literacy level of the average prisoner is less than 7 to 11-year-olds literacy level. There's the average literacy level expected of our 11-year-olds. Most of our adult prisoners don't have that literacy level. So that should ring the bell in the mind of anybody and join the dots and let there be interministerial collaboration to address this issue. One ministry cannot do it, one department cannot do it. All 3 departments have to sit down and say, what must we do so that the next generation of our children have 0% unemployment? I mean, every human being is using their skill and their talent and their gifts that have been given to them by God. If that happens, we have 0% unemployment. And it's all utopian. It's not something we cannot reach. We can exceed it. We can exceed very, very much.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Chris. We are running out of time. I wish we had enough time to. There were so many questions pouring in from parents and teachers when it comes to how to tackle the issue of unemployment and how to make their youths get work. But we'll talk about that next week.
Thank you.
Viewers, remember this is Education Talk. Now, if you've got any questions, you can send emails to educationtalk@loveworldtv.co.uk. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of our programs and thanks for watching.